Hello and welcome to We Poets. My name is Sally Baker and I'm the host of We Poets. We Poets is a poetry show for boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 13. So if you would like to be on the program, please have your school teacher or your parents call me. I'm always looking for new youngsters to come and read their poetry on the program. Also, if you are a teenager and go to middle school or high school and you would like to be an intern on We Poets, please have your school teacher or your parents call me because we have interns to produce our show. And I'm always looking for adult guests to come and tell about their jobs or careers. Tonight we have a very special guest. She's an artist and her name is TOMYE NEAL-MADISON, and she's going to tell us all about this wonderful art project that is going on here in Richmond. And also, if you would like to come and view it, or if you'd like to be a student and learn more about this wonderful activity. We're a nonprofit organization, so we're always looking for contributions to bring you new shows. And tonight we're producing at La Peña Cultural Center in Berkeley, California, and we thank them for letting us use their facilities. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you and interview Miss TOMYE NEAL-MADISON. Hi, TOMYE.
Good evening.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing very well.
I'm glad you could come. It's been a while since you've been on We Poets.
It has been, yes, but it's always nice to revisit.
Good.
So I'm glad you asked me again.
Thank you. So now tell us about this interesting project that we're going to be discussing tonight.
Well, I have involvement with some youth in a very different capacity than what you're used to me talking about.
Oh.
In this particular case, I'm not the teacher. I'm more or less the curator and project lead for getting youth to visit the Richmond Art Center.
Good.
Yes.
And what's the name of this project?
The project, well, it's a rather long name. It's the Art of the African Diaspora. It's being held at the Richmond Art Center, which is located in Richmond, California. And the location is at 2540 Barrett Avenue off of 25th Street in Richmond, California, 94804.
Good.
Yes.
And it's accessible by various means?
It's very accessible. It's wheelchair accessible. It's located with a front door. It's a very expansive space. It's one of the longest art studios in the Bay Area. It's even longer than where I used to work at Studio One Art Center.
Yes.
It's been in existence longer than that. Started by a woman, which is great. Yes.
Good.
Yes, very much so. And they offer all kinds of classes, but we're talking specifically about youth tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So the youth, we have a project to bring in youth, and they shouldn't be put off by the fact that they can't reach the Richmond Art Center as long as they live in Richmond. We have funding to provide bus service so that they can, it would be the AC Transit, but they don't have to be concerned about the cost of the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And get to the Richmond Art Center. The center is typically open Tuesday through Saturday. Sometimes the center will allow us to have access on Mondays, so it's specific and the kids can feel special.
Good.
Yes.
Wonderful,
Yes.
Wonderful. Now I have a list of questions here I want to ask you.
Okay.
So my first question is, how are you currently involved with the youth?
Well, forgive me, I have so many projects running in my head, I'm going to refer to my notes.
Okay.
So, as an exhibiting artist with the Art of the African Diaspora, hosted by the Richmond Art Center, we have this very engaging, vibrant visuals worthy for youth to view them. We believe that that's the case. So I'm part of a team effort to welcome the young residents of Richmond, California to the Richmond Art Center to experience looking at the exhibit and then selecting what appeals to them and creating their own version of their selection in the center's youth art studio. The Richmond Art Center has 2 studios dedicated for youth to stay and create artwork.
You mean they can live there?
No, not live there.
But
while
just
they're visiting.
I see.
For the field trip, they would come in and we would have some of our professional artists that have artwork in the show act as docents.
Oh, yes.
And walk them around the exhibit. And then they can stay, if they have the time and made the time, to actually work on creating an artwork based on something they've seen.
I see.
Yes.
And do you have materials there for the students to use?
Yes, we have paint, we have color pencils, we have gel pens. I mean, it's just a gamut. We'll at some point have the I forgot what they're called, where you scratchboard, where it's ink already. So there are various types of media that they can explore. If they've never done that, I'm quite sure they'll be excited.
Oh, yes.
If they've done it, then it's just reinforcing a different way of retaining information about the exhibit and how to do different media and what the history behind the diaspora means. So we're excited.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Now, how many instructors do you have there?
Right now, we're working on 4 to 5 instructors to rotate so that if one can't be available, another one is. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Now, why do you describe the artworks as engaging?
Well, to bring it back to what you usually promote as far as poetry, so like any good poem, the artworks have meaning. It may be between the lines, and it may be right in front of your face. Very clear messages. So there's bold colors, there's strokes, especially if you talk about painting. They're very obvious strokes. Sometimes they're very subtle strokes, so if you have to look really closely at the work, and that's very much similar to a poem. You have to really reread and revisit many times, and any good work of art is the same principle. It's not something that is just you look at it and dismiss it. Yes.
What is your favorite type of art that you did, maybe as a child, a teenager, and an adult?
I've always liked painting.
Oh,
so
painting.
A lot of people know that I use gouache, which is part of my, it's part of my email. People, so a lot of times don't know how to say it, so they might say it in different ways, but it's Gouache, and it's pronounced gouache. And it's actually a paint that's diluted with water, and a lot of the classic European painters used it in lieu of oil.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Did you travel abroad to take any art classes?
No, I've never had the fortune of traveling abroad. I mean, we live in an age now that you can kind of vicariously travel abroad by looking at a lot of programming. So I enjoy it that way.
But maybe one of these days you'll get
maybe
abroad.
one of these
One
days.
of these days. Now let's see here. What age of youth are you welcoming to the Richmond Art Center?
Well, I described it as youth able to move about through the exhibit from 15 to 20 minutes. Stay focused on the talk, because the professional artists will be talking and giving some history about the different ways that people have painted, what they're presenting. And I shouldn't just keep saying painting, because we do have some fabric textile work in the show. There's a number of sculptures in the show of different media, different materials. There's a very tall aluminum work of art done by an artist named James Moore. He's been very much striking out on his own and creating these wonderful sculptural pieces that are about 6 to 7 feet tall. So they're pretty amazing. And I have a flyer, I didn't bring it with me, that shows one of his art pieces in the flyer. So it was a very good piece for the kids to relate to. And it was in an open space so they could gather around the piece. So it's really a nice work. And then there are some, I said painting, there are some pastels, which is a different form, like a lot of kids call it chalk. Colored chalk. Very much of another media, and watercolor. And I think just about anything you can think of. You know, pencil, graphite, charcoal, all kinds of things. And various subjects, like figurative, musicians, political, pets. There's a couple of, yes.
They do it.
Yes,
Isn't
exactly.
that good?
Exactly.
Do you find that you have more young men than young girls coming? Young boys or young girls?
As far as the field trips? Or just in general?
Just in general.
Just in general, I would say it's probably even. There's a number of families that bring their children.
Good.
And of course, with families, you'll see toddlers and babies. Like we had a massive reception already, and there were 500 people.
Oh.
So that was pretty amazing.
Yes, and lots of babies came with their parents?
And lots of babies came, lots of toddlers, some young enough, or I should say old enough youngsters to understand what they were looking at. And that's what we were hoping for. And if somebody's in a wheelchair or needs some other kind of assistance, the center is set up for that kind of, to do that kind of thing.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
Yes.
Now let's talk about one of these paintings that you brought. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'd like to reference the one that I have on the easel.
Okay.
And it is well, I forgot what I called it. I think it's been called two different things at two different times.
Oh.
At one point, I renamed it to Skinned Knee because there is a little flaw in the knee area of the man.
Oh.
And the thing that I like about the painting is that it was based on going to an event, seeing that the shadow told the story, because you can hardly see the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the shadow, and then you see what the shadow is doing. And it looks like the painting's upside down until you look at the shadow and you see that he's actually reaching out to give a treat to his dog.
Oh, I see.
Talking about pets.
Uh-huh.
That was a good segue.
Yeah. And you like to do things with pets?
I like to do things with people. My
Oh.
primary thing are portraiture and people.
Oh, I see.
So I'm always intrigued for as many of there are of us, there's hardly anybody that looks alike, even twins.
Even twins?
Yes.
Have you done things with twins?
I've taught twins. I've watched
Oh.
twins grow for 3 years. When I was teaching a summer camp, I took last year off
Oh.
as a break. But previous to that, I taught these 2 boys.
Oh.
And it was very interesting how children try to discern the difference between the twins by using external things, like one wore glasses and one didn't.
Uh-huh.
And I told them, try to look at the 2 twins, their actual faces,
Oh, yes.
without whatever they had on.
Mhm.
You know, if one had nicked his face and had a bandage on, you know, if he doesn't have the bandage on, how do you tell the difference?
Yes.
You know, so they've finally got it, because
wonderful.
one was, hair was lighter, his facial hair was thinner, lighter than the other, and there's slight differences.
Mhm.
You know, it's very rare that people had the exact same, as they say, one side to the other side. The left and the right don't match. If you separate it, if you look in the mirror, and there's a trick where you put a mirror, you can open up your cabinet, your medicine cabinet, open it up to such an extent that it kind of cuts into your mirror that's on the wall, then you can get a better idea of what you look like, because you see yourself in reverse when you look in the mirror.
Oh.
And you can see the difference between one half and the other. It's very interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's like sometimes you say one foot is larger than the other.
That's right.
Or one arm is larger than the other,
right.
you know?
One side.
Wow.
Yes.
Never thought about it.
Yeah. I
Isn't
think
that
it's
something?
part of how I was going to say how we grow inside the body, but you know, it's part of that process.
Mm-hmm.
We're not absolutely matched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, what colors did you use in this painting?
Well, this one, I have a tendency, when I reviewed my work, I have a tendency to use muted colors.
Oh, yes.
So it's very subtle. And it's actually painted on brown craft paper,
Oh.
like a paper bag, the same kind of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to do that quite a bit, of using that texture, because it has a slight texture to it. I never paint on canvas because usually it's too bumpy.
Oh.
And even linen has a texture that I don't particularly care for, and it plus sucks up more paint.
Mm.
Yeah, but this one, it's just enough of color to convey what it is and not be over. I was more interested in telling the story than kind of overwhelming with the colors.
Uh-huh.
So it's very subtle.
Mm-hmm. Now, you didn't have, was there a dog in the room when you were painting, or you just painted that from your own?
This is from, I took a photograph of the event,
Oh.
and what existed in the photograph that's not in the painting, there was a whole bunch of wires because it was a dog contest.
A dog contest?
Yes.
Oh.
So the people, before they came up for the dog to be evaluated or whatever they do, this particular guy was giving the dog a treat to keep him settled.
I see.
Right, and in the place where he's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a whole bunch of wires around where he was standing between him and the dog. So of course that's not interesting in a painting, so I didn't put the wires in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's similar to, there was a mic set up for the person to explain who their dog is and that kind of thing. So I removed that.
Oh.
Yes, I know.
Well, it's a beautiful painting, and
Thank
I like the
you.
muted colors too.
Yes.
Uh-huh, good. Well, I think we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back and we'll have some more questions.
Okay.
And we're going to see another beautiful piece of artwork that you've
Well,
done.
thank you.
So boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and finish our interview. We'll be back in just a moment. tonight, TOMYE, and we're continuing with her wonderful artwork. So TOMYE, thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing. So my next question is, explain the specifics about the arrangements with the Richmond Art Center, please.
Well, I realized that we actually did touch on that in the first half. But it's worth repeating.
Yes.
The location is at 2540 Barrett Avenue in Richmond, California, 94804.
Mm-hmm.
So it is wheelchair accessible. If a child needed to, and this is specific for the group that I'm working with, because the best thing that I've learned over the years is never work alone. So the group that I'm working with, we are really encouraging youth. It doesn't matter if they are in, say, foster care and they have adopted parents, if they're emancipated and they just want to look at some artwork and create some artwork. It would be great if the youth were at least 6 to 7 years old, so they have enough attention span to be able to walk around the exhibit and then do some artwork without have to be cared for by a parent or a guardian. So we have that as our pretty much guideline of having the children be of that age and older. And as I said about mobility, as long as they can get through the door, and we'll have an artist to greet them with either the bus of load of kids, or if it's a family, it could be a large family, it could be a group of families, it could be like somebody's family reunion, and they just come in. So yeah, we're looking forward to youth being able to just come in and really enjoy that exhibit.
Great, great. Now, what happens to the youth's art?
Well, once they've completed art, it is hoped that they were inspired by something, because we know youth typically can go in a room and all of a sudden blank out and say, oh, I don't know what to do. You know, they look at a piece of paper and they're not fully engaged and they don't want to do anything on the paper, or they might decide they want to just do something on their own. It has nothing to do with the exhibit. So the works that are completed that were in fact inspired by the exhibit, we could tell, because there's a relationship between, I have photographed everything in the exhibit, so we have that for the kids to reference. And if they say, oh, but this has nothing to do with it, then they will get their work right then. If they decide that they are inspired by a work of art and we can see that, then it gets matted and it'll be shown in a public presentation later in the year.
Good, good.
Yes.
So you keep all these pieces there until your big event?
Yes, exactly. And I do the framing because I'm a framer.
Wonderful.
Yes.
You are a girl Friday.
Just about.
Just about now. Let's talk about your painting here, your second one.
Well, I brought this painting because this is actually a rendition of a dear friend of mine named Claire J. Baker.
Oh.
She'll appreciate it. If she ever watches YouTube, she's like in her 90s.
Oh, wonderful.
So if she ever watches YouTube, she'll be glad that I referenced her.
Oh.
Because she's been doing poetry for quite some time. And she loves doing poetry of nature, about nature, of nature and animals.
Good.
That's her fondness. And so I did her, if you look at this is a painting, it looks like a drawing, but I actually thinned the paint to such a degree that I could use a very thin brush. By thin, I mean it probably has 6 hairs in it. And I just did a lot of stroking, you can see particularly in this area, I did a lot of stroking to give a textural kind of appearance to the fabric, to make it look like fabric. And then she is actually done in a scale like she looks like a little child.
Yes.
Even though she, as I said, is in her 90s. When I did this, she was in her 80s.
Oh,
mid-80s.
bless her heart.
But the thing is, she's very childlike.
Oh.
So that's why I decided to render her in this way, because when I say childlike, her fascination with life is just so open. And I like that.
Yes.
And we've been friends for quite some time.
How nice. And she probably doesn't look 90.
No,
She's
she
that
doesn't.
outgoing
She
and
doesn't
youthful.
look 90. No.
Yes. Isn't that great?
Yes,
I'll have to
it
have her
is.
on the show.
Yes. Oh, that would be great.
Yes,
I think
she'd be
love
wonderful
that.
to
Yes.
be interviewed.
I'll ask her.
Yes.
I will ask her.
And we'll show
Yes.
her, we'll give her a copy of your this program so she can see it.
Yes.
See that she was on We Poets
That's
in a
right.
painting.
That's right. She'll be delighted.
Delighted.
Yes.
Now my next question.
Yes.
How long do you have to achieve this effort?
We have until March 13th, which is not a lot of time.
Oh.
So what we're hoping to do, if we're not successful in reaching our goal, which at the moment is around 160 some odd youth,
Wow.
then we want to get the grant that funds this extended.
Oh.
So hopefully that can go forward and have an easy time of doing that.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Can you tell us, what's the name of the grant that's
Oh,
funding
it
this
is,
project?
it is the Richmond Arts and Cultural Commission grant.
Mm.
That's for small projects.
Uh-huh.
And so we were awarded one, which was great.
Good.
Yes.
It's
So
given
we're
every
happy.
year?
It's given every year.
Mhm.
There are some moving parts right now where different people are changing their positions, but I'm quite sure they'll have it together for the next year's call
No,
for.
What do you mean they're changing their positions?
Well, there's, because it's the Richmond, it's in the city of Richmond,
Yes.
then there are staff that have moved or retired
I
or
see.
that kind of thing.
I see.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes,
Uh-huh.
which is natural.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes, that happens.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Now, is there anything else you'd like to put out about this wonderful exhibit before we end our program?
Well, I just want to remind people, it is at the Richmond Art Center, and I've said the address a couple of times, and that we welcome youth. It doesn't matter, they don't have to be attached to any person per se, but we would preferably have youth come in a group, and the groups can be as large as 20 at a time. Both art rooms, they have 2 youth art studios, can accommodate 20 youth.
Mhm.
So at one time, it could be 40 youth.
Mhm.
Now, the Richmond Art Center does have their own set of different field trips coming through that have nothing to do with ours, so that was the main thing.
Mhm.
Is just to make sure that you get in touch with me, and I'm quite sure that my information will show up at the end of the program.
Oh, yes, yes, it will, yes,
Yes.
it will. Could we touch upon, when you taught at the studio, it was
Studio
Studio
One,
One?
yes.
Let's talk about, that's where we first met you.
Yes,
Could we talk
exactly.
about that a little bit?
Oh, certainly. Studio One, for anybody who is not familiar, is located in Oakland, and it's a Parks and Recreation Department. It's a center that's under the auspices of the Park and Recreation Department of the city of Oakland.
Mhm.
So it employs so many different types of artists, and they have youth programs as well, and they're usually after school. So that's a very vibrant program for them. And I started out as a teacher, but I taught mainly adults when I started, and I worked there for 18 years for the department.
Yes.
And then I retired in 2014.
Oh, well, I know that I met you there, and they had so many wonderful programs.
Yes.
We always enjoyed coming there and always meeting you
Right.
there. And what were some of the things that you exhibited while you were there?
Oh, my.
So many, I know.
I know. As far as personally, or just putting up other people's art?
Personally.
Well, personally, I've exhibited there several times. I would say the most recent was a couple of years
Oh,
ago.
really?
They have a portrait exhibit, and as I mentioned earlier, I really love doing portraiture. So they usually have a portrait exhibit somewhere around February, March. And I have shown various types of portraits that I've done. The scale of them have been as small as probably 16 by 20 to as large as 32 by 40, or maybe a little bit bigger. And it's a very passion of mine to really try to look at people and figure out what makes this person look like they look.
Uh-huh,
You
uh-huh.
know?
Do you have your own studio?
I do. I have a space in my home
Good.
that's dedicated for me to do my art, and that's convenient because when I sometimes wake up at 2 in the morning, I can just get up and go to my space and do some art.
Isn't this great?
Yes,
Wonderful.
very great.
Wonderful.
And I know it's very fortunate because a lot of artists don't have
Don't
that.
have that, yes.
I've gone through the process like a lot of artists with working on my bed and keeping things under it, to finally having a table dedicated more or less to my artwork after the dishes are off of it, to now I have a drafting table that's about 4 or 5 feet long. So if you're fortunate, you stay with your art and you stay committed and practice, you can achieve quite a bit.
Mhm.
Yes.
And did you do something with glass?
Yes, and I now work in glass.
Tell us a
I
little bit
do-
about that
I
before
do
we end the program.
fused slumped glass, which is what's called cold working. It's not blowing glass.
Oh,
There's basically a general breakdown of glass of either hot glass or cold glass. So hot glass is when you blow it.
oh,
And it starts out as a cold piece of glass, but you melt it in such high heat that it then becomes vitreous, and you blow through a pipe. so you can get these beautiful shapes and use molds and different types of things to shape that. Well, that's not the type that I do.
Oh.
I take cold glass, put it in what people like, the closest they can refer to as an oven,
Uh-huh.
and then heat it up and see what happens.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much. We're running out of time here.
Okay.
But this has been a wonderful,
Yes,
wonderful
thank you.
interview. And I hope that we have lots and lots of children coming
Yeah, that
out
would
to
be
the
great.
studio.
Yes.
And what's your
Thank you
next
for
project?
helping us
What's your
to
next
plug
project?
this. My next project is a break. My next project is to get away.
Is to get away and relax.
Yes.
Don't think about art.
Yes.
But enjoy other people's art.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, always,
Yes.
yes. I love collecting art. I do collect
Oh.
art.
I bet you have lots of beautiful
Yes.
things in your house.
Yes, I
That
do.
you've collected over the years, huh?
I do, when I could afford it.
You could afford it, huh?
Yes.
Well, this has
Yeah.
been a wonderful, wonderful interview.
Thank
And once
you.
again, tell us the name of the art project and where it's located.
Okay, the Art of the African Diaspora, and it's located at the Richmond Art Center, which is at 2540 Barrett Avenue, off of 25th Street in Richmond, California, 94804.
And accessible out.
Accessible by buses, because I don't drive, so I can get there by a bus.
Good.
Usually it's the 72 line,
Mhm.
72M to be specific.
Yes.
Coming out of Oakland, which is where I live.
Mhm.
And there's also, of course, Uber, Lyft.
Oh, yes.
Various modes of transportation if you're a
Yes.
driver.
And then the BART.
And then BART.
Yes,
The
uh-huh.
BART will take you to Del Norte BART,
Uh-huh.
and then you just can get the 72M bus.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're out of time, so thank you so much. Let's
You're
say goodbye
welcome.
to our watching audience.
Oh, most
Goodbye,
definitely.
everybody,
Yes,
and
thank
thank you
you.
for watching.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.